Las Vegas has been released in Upland and we've had the collection reveals. In this episode I talk about how I did in the initial opening, how I fared with the collections, my general thoughts on the Las Vegas City release, and what my strategies are following the release and in preparation, of course, for the next city, Rio de Janeiro. How's it going, everybody? This is Radishhead and welcome back to another episode of Upland Analysis. As always, I'd like to thank my executive level channel members, Matrigno, Matsuda R, Monopoly Mike, and Bad Frog. Thank you for your support. And if you, like me, are struggling a little bit for UPIX following the Las Vegas City release, then you might just need to tune into the sponsor of this video, Studio City Bank. These guys are a community bank who aim to become the leading provider of financial services for Uplanders through their solid products and fantastic customer service. Now, if you're one of the many people who are struggling for UPIX liquidity after the Las Vegas City release, then you're in luck because getting a loan via Studio City Bank is very simple. All you need to do is submit a property that you'd like to use as collateral for the loan, DM the property and the mint price of that property to Broker, who is the founder of Studio City Bank, and you'll be offered a loan amount of 60% of the mint price of the property for any non-collections or properties in non-sold out cities, or 100% of the mint price for collection properties in sold out cities. Once you've submitted that information, Studio City Bank will find the property and offer you the loan amount, which you can then pay back within 4 weeks by offering back for the same property within that time period for the total loan amount that will be provided to you by Studio City Bank. So super easy way to get a bit more liquid UPIX in Upland. And while you're on the server, Studio City Bank also has other services such as a Spark Exchange, a pawn shop, a racing team and racetracks, and even the opportunity to invest in the real life Wake and Bake coffee company by buying some NFTs. There's a lot of fantastic stuff going on in Studio City Bank. Thank you very much for sponsoring this episode, and as always, links in the description and the pinned comment if you're interested in that. Right, so let's talk about Las Vegas. Now, this was a bit of an interesting city release for me, of course, because I was actually there in the city as it was being released, which was very cool. We got to see some behind the scenes action. It was quite impressive seeing just how many people are involved in every city release, sitting ready to tackle any issues and identify anything which goes on. And they have a live counter of how many properties have been minted and all of that. It was quite cool to see. But for the most part, I was obviously, like all of you, focused on trying to mint the best properties that I could. And I was on a decent path sort of going into the city release of my Block Explorer. I was hoping to grab something obviously in Arts District like everybody was. I wasn't quite able to do that, but I did manage to get something on Las Vegas Boulevard. Now, it wasn't on the strip itself, it was on the section of Las Vegas Boulevard between the Arts District and the Sahara Casino, so quite a popular bit. You'll notice that it's not showing up on the map now, and that's because I flipped it pretty quickly. I thought there was a really good chance that Las Vegas Boulevard would make it as a collection, but I only had one of them, and I wanted to sort of cash in on the hype while I could. So I think I minted it for about 60,000 UPIX, and I sold it for about 350,000 UPIX. So I'd say that's a really good markup. I probably could have gotten more for it if I really tried, but this is the advice that I always give to people in city releases, is that even if you're absolutely certain that the thing that you've got is a collection, sometimes it can be better to flip it before the release just to lock down some of that profit. By flipping my Las Vegas Boulevard property, that basically funded all of my spend in Las Vegas. So if you can pull off something like that, you're basically going to be winning guaranteed in every city release. Because it didn't matter if all of my other properties missed, I still would have been overall in profit just from that one flip. Whereas if I'd waited until after the collection reveals, one, maybe Las Vegas Boulevard wasn't a collection, then I would have been very sad. And two, even if it is a collection, sometimes the prices drop anyway. Like in the arts district, prior to the collections being announced, I don't think you could get in there for less than like 350, 400,000 UPIX, because everybody was like, this is definitely a collection and it's probably a rare collection. Well, it turns out it was a collection, but it was just a very high rated exclusive, not a rare, and the prices there actually dropped to about 150k. I don't know what they are right now. Let me see what the cheapest stuff you can get in the arts district is. Yeah, you can still get properties in the arts district for about 150k. So people who minted stuff in the arts district would probably have been better off flipping rather than waiting. So that's something that over time you'll kind of learn to appreciate, is that it's not always worth holding on, even if you're absolutely certain. Sometimes it is, depends if you've got enough for a full collection, or how the prices are looking pre-release. But I thought that was something that was quite interesting. So I managed to flip that, and then I sent my Explorer straight to downtown to try and grab as much stuff as I could. It was going really quickly. Even though I thought I was being super quick, I was only barely able to get 3 properties. I was so glad I managed to get 3, because I was like, okay, if downtown is a collection, I've probably got a full set there. That's all I need. But wow, the competition there was really high. I thought it'd be a bit slower because people would be focusing a little bit longer on the arts district or university district and stuff like that. But no, looks like there was lots and lots of people floating around downtown. You'll notice I haven't flipped any of those. They're all sitting in my downtown collection. I'm quite happy with that. And then once it was clear I wasn't going to get anything else in downtown, I kind of chilled out a little bit. I didn't FOMO too much, and I instead decided to scroll around to the map, try to find the cheapest stuff in Las Vegas and just mint a bunch of it. And I noticed that this area towards the south of Paradise was probably the cheapest properties available in this section of Las Vegas that has opened up so far. And I basically just floated around here, and I noticed there was a few other players who were sort of grabbing all of these as well. As a general rule, if you're scrolling around and you see an area that's filled with FSA properties, the properties that are not FSA, but they're a similar size, that's usually about as cheap as you can possibly get in a city. So you'll see there's loads of FSA properties around here, which means they're cheap enough to have fallen sort of below that threshold. So look, this FSA is 9,000 UPIX. And I think I minted these for about the same amount. Yeah, 8775. That is about as cheap as it could possibly go in Las Vegas, at least for the bit that was released, in this first module. So that was my minting strategy. I thought it went pretty well. Grabbed something on Las Vegas Boulevard, grabbed some downtown, and then went to my backup plan, which was just grab a bunch of cheap stuff for flipping. I might flip those for dollars. In a few days, we'll see how that goes. And then the next phase of any city release is, okay, you've minted all the stuff you want to mint. Now let's think about speculation and if there's any good deals that you want to buy. And the thing which so many people were talking about during that period between the release and the collections being revealed was this piece of artwork here. And this is always the case. Upland always love to release a nice flashy bit of promotional art for their various cities, and people love to overinterpret them, because that one time that I think it was Bronx, where every single picture on the artwork coincided with the collection. And ever since then, people have gone mad trying to interpret all of the different letters and whereabouts of the city they are. And people kind of, including me, kind of fell for it a little bit. Back in Queens, there was a couple of images which were identified as certain areas within Queens, but they didn't turn out to be collections. I know Northern Boulevard was a key one there. A lot of people lost a lot of UPIX speculating on Northern Boulevard because it popped up on the Queens version of this graphic. And the same thing kind of happened in Las Vegas. It didn't take long for people to figure out where each of these pictures is supposed to be depicting. And you know what? As usual, Some of them did hit. This first S here, I believe is the Arts District, and of course that did end up being a collection. I think this A was established to be Fremont Street, which again was a collection. And this S at the end here was Las Vegas Boulevard, which was a collection. But there's other areas that were identified within this graphic which missed, especially lots of streets. It was not a good release for people speculating on streets. Now, I don't know which area corresponds to which letter, but I saw people speculating on Spring Mountain Road, Sahara Avenue, Charleston, Tropicana. I was kind of thinking, well, there's a decent chance that some of these would hit. I found a decent offer on a property on Tropicana Avenue. The hype was getting to me. People seemed absolutely convinced that Tropicana was going to be one of the collections. So I went for that. Unfortunately, it missed, as did all of those other ones which I just listed. But hey ho, it's not a terrible property, and I didn't get it for a terrible price. It is a Burger King, which I think is pretty cool, and I think I got it for about 130% mint. So that's not the end of the world. It's quite a big property. Not the worst size ever. I've put it in my Las Vegas collection, so at least it's getting a small earnings boost from that. It is worth mentioning that in this first kind of initial section of Las Vegas, only 7 of the 16 collections have been dropped in this area. So that means there should be another 9 collections already in the blockchain, but they're contained within streets and neighborhoods, not in this central Las Vegas bit, which is very interesting because when I did my city analysis, most of the top popular bits of Las Vegas, which I thought were like prime collection material, were either located within this initial area or at least passed through this area. Like the streets, like Sahara Avenue and stuff like that. But it was confirmed by the community managers that if your property is not a collection now, it won't be in the future when we get more areas unlocked. So that means there's no chance that Tropicana is going to be a collection. Unless something really weird happens where it is a collection but only within a certain section of Las Vegas, which I think would cause community uproar, quite honestly, so I'd be very surprised if they went with that. So 9 collections in the remaining bit of Las Vegas. I feel like a lot of the collections have to be over in this west side, like in Summerlin, where there's lots of really expensive houses and lots of lovely places to live over here. I think we're probably due an ultra rare street, and I know there's a couple of quite short, very expensive streets over here in Summerlin. So hey, I'm looking forward to speculating on that when we get confirmation that the next part of Las Vegas is being released. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I also minted some Twin Lakes during the initial minting stage. Those were going really quickly as well, and I think that's a lovely neighborhood, and I'm glad that turned out to be a collection as well. So I've talked about my strategy during the mint, during that period between the initial opening and the collection reveal. What about after the collection reveals? Well, when the collection reveals came out, it turns out that there were a couple of neighborhoods which still had properties available to mint, and the big one there which really stood out was Rancho Oki. Because Rancho Oki was actually turned out to be a collection which requires 4 properties to collect it instead of 3, it actually pushed it up from a standard to a limited. And I always quite like minting limited collections. I think they're quite easy to resell. You can flip them for dollars for about mint price usually. So I thought, okay, this is like a good way to basically convert UPX to dollars when the time comes. And I basically headed over to this area and I minted as many of these smaller Rancho Oki properties as I could. I might actually hold on to a few of them. I spent quite a lot of UPX there. I think I spent about 400,000 UPX minting cheap properties, relatively cheap properties in Rancho Oki. I'm pretty confident that's going to pay off in the mid to long term. There are still properties available in Rancho Oki to mint, but I think the floor there is about 50,000 UPX to mint, so only the more expensive ones are available. That's a really good earner. If you're sort of just coming into the game, you're looking for somewhere good in terms of yields, that's a pretty good mint getting some of those. But otherwise, I think I've spent quite enough in Las Vegas, both in real life and in Upland. So I'm quite happy with what I managed to get during the release, after the release. Let me know how you did. I love to read all of your comments. But what is my strategy now, I hear you asking? Well, it's kind of a clever balance that I'm trying to pull off here, because it's a bit of an unusual situation where we know that Rio de Janeiro is coming up, and a lot of people are obviously really excited about that. It's the first international city in an area where Upland is historically been very successful. So I'm obviously trying to keep a hold of a decent amount of UPIX to take advantage of that. However, I'm also conscious that everybody else is also doing the same thing. So I'm trying to take advantage of the fact that I didn't spend everything that I had in Las Vegas, and if I see some UPIX deals that are basically too good to be true, and they do exist, I've seen a couple already of people selling their properties for like half price in UPIX, just to have that Rio liquidity. Like, fair play to them, that's a good strategy, but I'm going to take advantage of that by buying those, and then in the mid to long term, that should really pay off. So strategy always kind of depends on how many resources you have available and how much you want to save up for the next city, or how much you want to prepare for, the longer term. I know there were players who didn't participate in Vegas at all because they were expecting an even bigger city to come around the corner, which it seems like it has. So fair play to those people as well. And as always, if you do want to speak with me one-to-one in terms of strategy, that's a perk offered to all of my executive level channel members, and I wish to thank them and my director level channel members for this video. Bad Frog, Matrigno, Monopoly Mike, Matsuda R, and Tujar Zing, and all of my other channel members as well. I hope you all found this video quite interesting. I hope you all did well in Vegas. Let me know in the comments how you did, and I'll see you all in the next one.